myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Tuesday night, which means I'm joined by Liam Kennedy from the Shields Gazette to talk NUFC transfers and takeover. And as always, plenty of questions flying in, over 200 waiting for you, Liam. So the quest for knowledge doesn't stop in the summer, I'm afraid. And you're the man who people like to think's in the know, certainly with some of the transfer talk anyway. The takeover talk, none of us really know what's going on. But you know, hopefully you can put bed some of the rumours that have started to circulate. But how are you doing, mate? All right?
Yeah, I'm all good. A slight change of scenery here because the littlest came in from school, went upstairs with the cats and fell asleep on the bed. So I normally do it in the bedroom upstairs, so I'm now sitting in the kitchen. But like, my phone's dead, so I've got the extension lead here. Honestly, mate, it's been chaos getting to this point.
Great stuff. Guy has got straight in and just says, get the likes in early. Much better for the algorithm to push the stream while it's live rather than a flood at the end. Thanks, Guy, for your technical knowledge there. I wouldn't have even known that. So there you go, folks. Hit the thumb up. Get the likes in for Liam and me tonight. Stuart then, normal service resumed. He says, Aya, Chowdhury and King. If that is the spine of our side next season, where do you think we'll finish?
Better than we did this year, to be honest. I think Aya's a really good player. I think Chowdhury's got. I think he's a good player. Look, I think carries around the stuff that happened with Matt Ritchie a little bit, and I can see when Newcastle fans are a little bit not 100% for that transfer as they were in January as well. But I like him as a footballer. I think he could start in and play that John Joe Shelby role, and I do think that's an area medium term that Newcastle need to really improve on, because John Joe Shelby doesn't produce the kind of performances that he did in the last two games of the season against Sheffield United and Fulham on a consistent enough basis. As for Josh King, he was a player they wanted last summer, and then when it became obvious that Callum Wilson was going to be available for reasonable pricing around 20 million, they dived in 2-foot and got that deal done. But Josh King is a player that they like. And look, I know he didn't score in 11 games, I think it was, at the back end of the season for Everton, but I wouldn't judge him on that because he's a proven Premier League performer who only 18 months ago was going to go back to Manchester United, where he started out for a significant amount of money. Last summer, stayed at Bournemouth, but was linked to the likes of Lazio and lots of teams in Serie A. He is a talented player, and one who could come in and I think would add the right kind of balance in the forward area. I was just thinking about that today, actually. Just thinking about the balance of the squad and mainly thinking about Dwight Gale and his place in the squad. And obviously we know that Andy Carroll is on the way out as well. And Dwight Gale, to me, doesn't really have a place in this squad. So you've got, if you look at it from a squad building perspective, you've got Callum Wilson, who is your number one. And in any given, even if they sign somebody, it's likely that Alan St-Maximin in this current system would play up front as well with him. So you've got your front two. You're kind of wanting people who can come in and do jobs. And look, I know this might not go down very well, but I think Ryan Fraser can come in and do a job. And I think he's a forward player who can play in it too. And you've got Joe Linton, who add a little bit of value. Then do you want another striker who can come in and really replace Callum Wilson? Potentially, yes. And I think a Josh King coming in just adds that little bit of balance because he's got goals in him. Not prolific, but he's got goals in him. Linked up really well with Callum Wilson. I think he would do a decent job if Callum Wilson wasn't playing as well. Can play in any of the wider forward roles, can drop in, can play central. I like it. And if you sign those three players, like we said, we talked last week at length with Lee Clark, who gave incredible insight. Anybody who hasn't watched that show from last week, it wasn't much talking from me or Steve. It was all Lee Clark, and it was just great insight. And one of the key points, I wrote a story on it this week because I was really impressed by what he had to say. But he signed Dyer from Brendan Rodgers at Celtic when he was at Kilmarnock, brought him in on loan, played him in midfield, played him in defence. Was really impressed and was blown over the idea that Newcastle could get him for such a relatively low fee as it would turn out. So yeah, I think if you could sign those three players, Newcastle United's squad would have much more balance, and it would be much more. It would just have a better feel about it, a bit more strength and depth. And I do think midfield is one area that really needs addressed. There's no doubt about that. I think everybody would accept that. And I think one thing that might be hard to take for a lot of people would be if we didn't bring Joe Willock back this summer. There's no suggestion that Willock will be made available again this summer. I think that could be one that happens later in the window, if at all, because I think they're going to want to have a little look at him and just bring him back into the fold. Does he really fit into Arsenal's style of play? If Arteta plays the same way he did last season, the answer to that's no. He doesn't fit into their team at all, because they're looking for somebody, hence why I use that Emile Smith role. They're looking for more of a 10, more of a finding gaps, more of a split in the eye of, like a pass through the eye of a needle type thing. And that's not Joe Willock. Joe Willock is like your box-to-box 8 who piles into the box, makes late runs and scores goals. And I'm not 100% sure that Arsenal are going to set up with that way next season. But yeah, there's lots of interesting developments. Aya isn't the only defender that Newcastle United are looking at. There are others. There was one mentioned this week, which we've turned up, which was Saliba, who's also at Arsenal. And I think that's one that is going to have to. It might have to wait. I think if you sign Saliba, then you're probably going to say that Joe Willock isn't coming to Newcastle United or isn't going to be made available by Arsenal, because you can only sign one player on loan. And although you could get Joe Willock if you put money up, I do think it's going to be difficult for Newcastle United to stretch their budget to a point where they can kind of pay around about the figure that Arsenal want for a player of that ability.
Yeah, fair enough. Lots of people asking the same questions. Any news on these transfers or these incoming transfers? Willems, of course, came out with his statement that he wants to come back to the club, which is great. But do Newcastle United want him?
Yes. And I did mention, I think I mentioned it on the show maybe 6 weeks ago, that there was a potential problem with Willems. The Chronicle have since reported it as well. But yeah, it's the new Brexit rules and how you get him into the country on a work permit effectively, because the lad hasn't kicked a ball for 15, 16 months. And the new rules basically put you in a place where you have to have played at a certain level for a certain level of team in a certain division, or had international caps, etc. And Willems would have to be a big exception on that, because he doesn't tick any of the boxes that would be required to come in and get new work permits under the Brexit rules. But there are, look, what I've seen it suggested by the Chronicle, there are exemptions. I don't know that as a fact, but I think that's probably pretty common sense to think that you would imagine if Newcastle United are going to push through with this deal, that there would be exceptions made, given that he got injured plying his trade here, has worked here before, and has performed. So he would be a worthy addition to the Premier League. Willems has got other clubs interested as well. There was a lot of Premier League interest last summer. One of them was West Ham. I'm not sure whether they would come in again this summer, but I know it's been mentioned on the show before numerous times. We've mentioned last summer. But Willems, to me, is a deal that could be struck by Newcastle United. But again, it's the balance and plates thing. So what I would think is Newcastle United will sign Jethro Willems if Matt Ritchie's deal at Bournemouth goes through. And that's one that we don't know if 100% it will go through. I mentioned on the show last week, or maybe the week before, that Matt Ritchie, you've got to think about it. He's a lad who left the likes of Portsmouth when he was not really getting games when he was younger, went away, dropped down the divisions, went to Swindon, other teams, got games because he's a winner. He wants to play week in, week out. He doesn't want to sit on the bench. For the first time since he was a teenager, he's been in a position where he hasn't been the first choice in any position in any team. And that frustrated him. It clearly frustrated him. Obviously, he got a welcome back into the team after that last international break. Played around maybe the last 10 games or so, and was excellent. And would, because of his experience and because of his ability and just that competitive energy, would be a loss to this team. Look, I know, Steve, we argued the toss over it a few times, didn't we? That you were pro Ritchie, I wasn't anti Ritchie, but I sort of thought, maybe his day's done at Newcastle United. I'll be the first to hold my hands up and say he proved me totally wrong at the back end of last season. He was one of the main catalysts for that transformation in results and performances. And I think if Newcastle United lose him this summer, is Jethro Willems going to replace that experience? Is Jethro Willems going to replace that quality potentially? Is Jethro Willems going to replace that kind of competitive energy? I would argue two of those, he isn't going to replace them. But there are positives in Jethro Willems' favour. Look, he would suit the system down to the ground, really, wouldn't he? That's his position. Yeah, his left wing back position. is he fit enough? We've both heard rumours. We've heard bits and bobs that there are some doubts about it. I think it was a political decision why he didn't play. That was mentioned in his interview this week with the Chronicle. But he wants to come back, and it's nice for players to have players who want to play for the football club. But you've got to ask yourself, is he a replacement for a Matt Ritchie? He doesn't tick the same boxes, but he would tick other ones as well because he's friends with Alan St. Maximin. It's a way of keeping him happier because he lost his other mate, didn't he? Up the 23s, Florentine Alessio was left. So it'd be nice for him to have somebody to not around with on Tyneside. But look, you don't sign players for that. And I think Williams is one we're going to have to watch. And I think Williams could be defined by Ritchie. I don't know what the money situation is like at Bournemouth at the moment. They obviously missed out on promotion back to the Premier League by the playoffs and talk of change of managers, etc. So it'll be interesting to see whether they'll be able to plump up the 5-6 million. I know that's the kind of figures Newcastle United were looking at as recently as January. And it fell through because of money. Another point, because I know, Steve, I'm not going to keep waffling, don't worry. Another point I'll make on Williams is money. So that was one thing that held a potential deal up in January was the cash, that he was asking for a lot of money. Whether that was sign-on fees, agent fees, I'm not sure, or whether it was pure wages, but I know there was some distance apart in terms of cash, and that would be something that'd have to be addressed as well. But I'm sure if both parties wanted a deal, they'd probably be able to come to some kind of agreement.
Craig reckons you've looked a bit down on the takeover this week. Do you think it's looking like we'll lose arbitration, he says?
No, I've got no indication at all that Newcastle United lose arbitration. I've got no indication whether they'll win arbitration. I've got no indication as to where things are at. Look, everybody at this stage, and you'll back this up, Steve, is everybody's playing the waiting game. And we're at that silent point now where we're waiting on the next move. The next move is to be played by the Premier League on all fronts. That's where the deadlines are coming. Friday's deadline is the CAT case. The arbitration, they try to push the evidence building and evidence submissions back. For that, we don't know if they were granted that extension. And look, it feels like we're getting towards the end game. Everyone gets a bit nervy towards the end game. I want this deal to go through. I'm massively in favour of it. I have been throughout this process, but I've been very consistent in my approach, and I will go back to that as well. I wouldn't ever commit to saying I'm confident of any deal happening, but I am hopeful. And the people that I speak to and the things that I hear are all relatively positive. So if I may come across as a little bit down, that's just because I'm a boring git. That's nothing to do with the fact that I've heard anything negative about the takeover.
You're not, mate. Look, you're not.
Let's just wait and see. Let's just see how it plays out. I know it's really difficult for everybody out there to stomach that at times, but it is what it is. We're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. Will the CAT come first? Will the arbitration come first? Will the arbitration be pushed back from July? Literally, we don't know. We're just all going to have to wait and see how this plays out.
So Brian's question is, do you think any news will come out with the CAT case starting on Friday? Oh, he's got... Wow, you look like an alien, Liam. You looks like you've melted on screen.
Am I back yet or not?
Ah, you're back now. You look like you'd actually melted on screen. I'll give you the time check on that. It was,
I am a bit warm, like. 14
minutes in, go back to that and get a screenshot of it. I'm sure John from QTech will probably do it anyway. But you actually look like you'd metamorphosed into something which it was like the film The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. That's what it was like. Anyway,
you know what it was a stupid internet again. So this phone is just connected to the internet, and I've just took it back off again. So I must have done a little melting between.
God, your internet. Andrew Malloy says, Liam, do you know when the strips will be released?
No, unfortunately, I don't. Look, Newcastle United is an absolute closed shop. It's an embarrassment at the moment. It really, really is. Look, they're having every club in the country's released their retain list. Newcastle United allowed the Premier League to do it. They've not mentioned anything on the sponsors. They've not mentioned anything on Castore taking the new deal. I did get an answer for a question last week. Somebody came on and asked about Fun 88. So I did find that out, that Newcastle United signed a relatively long-term, although undisclosed amount of time, long-term deal last summer. So I think Fun 88 is here to stay. Look, they're good fun on Twitter as well. I quite like the Fun 88 accounts, even if it's not the most aesthetically pleasing logo on the strip. But no, I think Castore will be announced. It's a matter of time. But as ever with Newcastle United at the moment, it's just a painful experience. Getting answers, getting anything from anybody. It's worse than ever now. It really is. Like I'll reflect that to everybody out there because you probably have no clue. But often getting steers, getting help, that kind of thing can often be like pulling teeth in Newcastle United. It is incredible now. It's gone so slow. Getting any answers, getting any clarification, not just for myself, but other people in the industry, is really, really, really difficult. Look, we don't know what the plans are with the strip. We don't know what the plans are with the squad. We don't know what the pre-season plans are, because that's all been thrown up in the air at the moment, isn't it? With the changing of the grading of Portugal, where Newcastle United were going to play a friendly and have a little training camp. I mean, really, are Newcastle United going to go out there and have that 10 to 2 weeks sort of cooling off period when you come back? Are they going to do that? I don't imagine so, because it's going to be right in the heat, in the midst of a pre-season camp, readying themselves for the Premier League. So maybe they can get exemptions, but it's the type of things like that we're trying to find answers to at the moment. But we're just hitting against brick walls. But it's been difficult. But fingers crossed on the strips, because I know some people still out there still get really excited about new kits getting announced, buying them for the kids and that kind of thing. It's much less than what it used to be when sort of we were younger. But yeah. Fingers crossed, we should have something very soon. And judging by the type of kits that they put out from Wolves and Rangers last season, they're quite smart as well. So I'm quite pleased for the change, because I wasn't a massive fan of the Puma kits. Anybody who's watched this show will know that I was not a big fan of although the last third kit was relatively decent.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not one for strips. I've got to be perfectly honest, but look, it's something that a lot of people do get excited about. So it's good stuff. A lot of stories circulating about Rafa again. Basically, Football Insider on Twitter in particular said that Rafa's waiting for the Toon job, even though there's a lot of vacancies around. I mean, it looks as if he is just biding his time, doesn't it?
And why not? I think for the first time in his career, I mean, that's unfair. Not the first time in his career. But one of the rare times, it would be nice to see him take a job that he really, really deserves to get. He worked hard. He got Newcastle United to a point, and was sort of tied, both hands and both legs tied behind his back. He was totally shackled at Newcastle United. So it'd be nice to see him get the job. Look, I put it out there in a conversation with Ross Gregory, my boss, last week. And it was RIP to my notifications when NUFC 360 account picked up on a part of a conversation that I was having with Ross, where I said me and Ross were having a little bit of a to and fro. Anybody who knows Ross Gregory out there, you may not, give him a follow. He's somebody he's never been pro Rafa. So we had a little bit of it, as we would normally in the office, had a little bit of to and fro about it. And all I said was, I think he's waiting for the Newcastle job. I think he wants the Newcastle job. And I think he would take a job. In the meantime, he's been a man who likes to work. He has to work. It'll be killing him not being in a job, watching all this football play by. But I do think he's waiting. And NUFC 360 picked up on that. And it just seems to have been like a little bit of a trundling along now. You're seeing your Football Insiders, all of these bizarre websites picking up on that kind of thing. I'm not saying that.
I have been telling everybody for 12 months, of course, but it's, but yeah, for me, it's the job he wants. He will come back if the takeover goes through. That's where we're at. So, yeah, look, no surprise, but the takeover's got to go through first, I think, before we see Rafa, return. And let's hope it does go off. In more exciting news, completely off topic, this photo is circulating on Twitter tonight. And that is, for any Star Wars fan or Indiana Jones fan, is Harrison Ford at the Ship's Cat on North Shields Fish Quay today in his cycling gear. Because obviously he's filming the new Indiana Jones film at Bamborough Castle. And he likes to go and cycle. So he's done a few miles there, by the looks of it, to come down and... Well, it is, but yeah, some lucky punters managed to get a photograph and a selfie with him, which was great. So I just thought I'd bring that up just to completely change the subject. I also wanted to pull up this, Liam. What did you think of Phil Foden's new Gaza haircut?
I don't think I would pull it off particularly, but I think he looks all right. I think I don't know. I think it's quite nice. Seeing the lads just being confident, enjoying themselves. And there are shades of Gaza there. I mean, Gaza's was a bleach blonde, wasn't it? His is more of a grey. But look, a supremely talented footballer. And I hope everyone else out there is really looking forward to Euro 2020, whatever they call it these days. 2020, I think it's still called. I hope everybody's looking forward to as much as I am, because it's still, I don't know, I'm in my 30s now and I'm still getting excited for tournaments as much as I did when I was like a kid. I'm still feeling it. And it's nice to know that, look, England are going to be part of the conversation this time, part of the conversation with, can they win it? And I think they've got the talent in that squad to win it. I would argue that the fixtures haven't been kind to them. Anybody who's got the wall chart up already will know when you start plotting the course to a final, it's going to be a real tough task. England are going to have to beat literally everybody that is anybody in the tournament to make it even to the semi-finals. And I think, but they can. They've got that ability. They've got that ability in them. I think there's, for me, there's only a couple who I think can do it. And you're talking of your France. France is the clear favourites for me. Belgium are still a quality side. Portugal have got talent in the forward areas, talent galore, to be honest, and that's not even talking about Ronaldo, your Bruno Fernandes, etc. They've got loads of players. So yeah, I think of those four, you'll probably find a winner. And I just hope there isn't I hope there isn't any of this mass hysteria. If England do, for example, get a France in a second round or whatever, and crash out, you know what I mean? I hope there isn't the mass hysteria, because it's just tough. You couldn't have asked for the group stages to be any more tough, to be honest. In a weird kind of way, you've got a team that beat England in the last World Cup in a semi-final, the first game that you play. I mean, get off to a bit of a rough start and don't get the result that you want. You're walking into a local derby, a one that's been brewing since the time of Gaza, since '96. You know what I mean? At a major tournament, it's not the kind of game you'd want to follow up a tough result in. So I think, look, I hope there isn't a mass hysteria. This is a really talented, quality England squad, and it can go far. The wheels can come off quite easily as well, but that's tournament football. And look, on Phil Foden, look, I'm just really looking forward to seeing him play. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm a massive Mason Mount fan. Declan Rice has his critics. I think he's grown into a real quality player. And look, there's so much quality. Harry Kane, arguably one of the best strikers in the world. England have got half a chance. They've got half a chance, and hopefully all of this political arguments, which I'm not going to get into, is brushed aside, because ultimately people aren't booing the players themselves. They're booing the act. And let's not pretend that football stadiums are an inherently positive place. There is booing, there is criticism, there is all this kind of thing. But let's just get behind the players. Whatever your political views, just get behind the players. And let's see England do well. Let's all unite and see England, really go far in this tournament. Because it was brilliant, wasn't it, Steve, last time? Remember last time?
Yeah, fantastic.
It was brilliant. And England had a really good draw. They basically had the red carpet put out for them to get to the semi-final of the World Cup that year. There's no arguing that. But they did it, and it brought everyone together. And I wouldn't be like half of these idiots chucking me pint in the air, by the way. But I think I'm going to stay away from any of these sort of big parties that go on over the summer. Because I'd rather drink me beer, to be fair.
Never waste your beer. Never waste your beer. Stu Penman's come in with a question. He says, Liam, as you are a journalist, can you pronounce the word impasse? I'm wondering, as you are a journalist, do you, as a journalist, have to pronounce it differently as you are a journalist?
What is this question, Stu? What does that mean? Impasse. Impasse?
Well, how else would you pronounce it? Impasse? Impasse?
Impasse? I don't know. We'll make myself look stupid, Steve. What do you move on?
Well, that's what he's doing deliberately. Yeah, that's just typical of Stu. Grant says Fraser out. It's a good time to bring in the sponsors, I think. Big shout out to Spider VPN for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN. They can help protect your internet passwords, etc. So Google the lads at Spider VPN. They are one of our main sponsors, as are skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. And website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay as you go. Waste collection. And there is Sir Bobby in his NUFC Matters strip. Also a big shout out to John at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle, and to John at Jab Signature. Big shout out to those guys as well who've been with us from the very, very start. If you're a first time visitor to the channel, just click on the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right hand corner and subscribe to the channel. Now up to 41,000, which is never taken for granted. Thank you very, very much. And hit the thumb up to like the channel and click share the video tonight to your social media. Drop into the comments to ask some questions and to meet like-minded Newcastle fans. And don't forget, we are big supporters of the NUFC Fans Food Bank here. So you can still make a donation to the food bank by going to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and dropping anything you want into the matchday bucket. You will, of course, be entered into the prize draw for this wonderful watch, which will be announced. The winner will be announced when the NUFC Matters 24-hour charity pool night goes ahead on Friday the 6th of August, and Keith Patterson will be pulling the winner out. Don't forget as well, you can visit our website, nufcmatters.com, and you can buy some pretty snazzy t-shirts and other items. So get yourself onto the website, have a look and see what you fancy. And as always, I will be back for the rest of the week. Wednesday night, we will be doing Retro Night at 6 o'clock. This week, we're looking at games between Newcastle United and Sheffield Wednesday. Thursday night, it'll be myself, John Gibson and Supermac. And Friday night will be the Three Amigos. So an action-packed week as always. Right, let's get back to your questions. Sutty says, Liam, what do you think of Ben Jacobs' takeover and the current court case based on his comments on Twitter and on Steve's show, the Fab Four? So a few questions wrapped into one. There has been a bit of to and fro between Ben and Keith in the last 10 days, I guess, since Ben appeared on the show with Keith. I think we reached a bit of a stalemate, if you want my honest opinion. And, everything's changed, but nothing's changed. We've got the guys together. Ben's subsequently been, out and about on another podcast again. And he's also had his fair share of comments on Twitter, as has Keith. So I don't think any of this in the grand scheme of things changes anything at all. It's just basically people having an opinion. Somebody's going to be right. Somebody's going to be wrong. Takeover's either going to go through or the takeover's going to collapse. And that's it. But Sutty wants to know what you think of it all.
I can't really speak for either of those guys, to be honest. I watched both shows. I watched the first show. I didn't watch Ben, for example, on other podcasts and things like that. I haven't seen anything that he said, but I follow him on Twitter. He follows me. We've had conversations on Twitter. We've disagreed. We've agreed. We've had all sorts, and that's the nature of the game. I think Ben has come out with some stuff that Keith doesn't agree with. Keith's come out with some stuff that Ben doesn't agree with, and it's not really something that I'm going to get involved in. Ben's got his sources. He's a journalist who's worked for a number of high-profile companies in a number of high-profile roles. And he's somebody that obviously has his sources and trusts his sources and puts the stuff out there. So, yeah, I respect him as a journalist. I certainly won't be saying I think he's wrong. I think he's this, that, and the other. We've had disagreements in the past. Like I say, we've agreed as many times as well. And I think, look, ultimately, it's up to you as fans to decide what you decide to take in, what you decide to assess, what you believe, what you don't believe. And that's the nature of Twitter, to be honest. And Twitter, I'm mentioning Twitter mainly because it is a platform that you see a lot of debate, and there's not a problem with healthy, constructive debate. If it goes any further than that, look, it's not great, and we see a lot of that on social media. I'm not saying from those two guys. I'm saying wider than that, much worse than that. We've been both on the back end of that. Sometimes it's some of the nasty stuff that you see out there. But look, I would just advise, if you don't like what Ben says, just don't follow him. And if you choose not to believe what he says, don't. I hope your first thought isn't to say, I'm going to tweet him, calling him this, that, and the other. And the same goes for Keith as well. You don't like what he does, just don't follow him. And I hope you wouldn't think that just because you want to have a debate with somebody and disagree with somebody, that you suddenly start calling people names. And that goes for Keith, Ben, Steve, anybody. It goes for anybody. All the other podcasts, the Gallagher Shot Slots, issues in the past with other people. Just don't call people names. Just have a debate, walk away from it. You don't have to convince everybody that you're right. You can disagree, agree to disagree, and move on. And I think that's the problem for me on Twitter. That there's so many people out there that are determined to almost like indoctrinate their ideas on you. And if you don't agree, that it suddenly becomes personal. It doesn't need to. It doesn't have to. Just settle yourselves down, calm down, and walk away. If you don't like what I say, don't watch this. If you don't like what I say, don't follow us, because I'll soon block you. If you start getting aggressive, or you start getting, start swearing at us and things like that. Look, a bit of swearing is not going to hurt anybody. But if you start calling names and things, you just get blocked from my behalf. And I would advise anybody who's suffering with anything like that out there to do exactly the same.
Yeah, me too. Rafa Benitez as God says, what would you do with Woodman this summer, Liam? Keep progressing him out on loan, or is he now ready to be the number one?
I don't think he's ready to be number one. No, I think Swansea not getting promoted scuppered the plans a little bit. I don't know, there were definite plans, but I'd imagine that he would have stayed at Swansea and had a season on loan in the Premier League. And I think Newcastle United maybe then would have come at it next summer with a straight shootout between Dubravka, who is undoubtedly Newcastle United's number one and doesn't deserve to be unseated, in my opinion, for next season. It would have been a straight shootout between the two of them. That's been scuppered by the fact that Swansea remain in the Championship. Will he stay at Swansea? Look, there's potential there, but I think for his career now, he needs a season in the Premier League. And it's just whether Newcastle United can work that out. I wouldn't be selling him. Look, I see the arguments out there, and I've even balanced them up myself and thrown them out there as well. That could Newcastle United boost their meagre summer transfer budget by throwing a Freddie Woodman? Arsenal are big fans. We've seen Celtic link. We've seen lots of other. Swansea will be in the conversation to bring him in. Could Newcastle United conceivably make 10 plus million from a goalkeeper who may be the goalkeeper in 18 months' time, but may not? I mean, it's one of those that you've got to weigh up. Depends how meagre the budget is, and we don't know that. There's been a lot of numbers thrown about, but we don't actually know. I remember last summer there was numbers thrown about as well that suggested it was going to be in the 20 million mark from memory. It ended up being about 35 plus. Look, I don't think it's going to be that high this season, but I wouldn't start writing it off as 8 to 10 million, which some people have been saying. But Newcastle United are going to have to get some value, and I think one of the players that might get mentioned in conversation as we go on today, but Dwight Gale's one that I would look to sell. I mentioned it earlier and I mentioned it again. He's a player that I just don't see having much of a future at Newcastle United.
No, I mean, from your perspective, Andy Carroll, not being retained, is that a good thing, or were you sad to see him go?
No, I was sad. I was sad because you believe, you want to dream a little bit, and it was sad that it didn't turn out the way many Newcastle United fans hoped it would. I was a fan sitting hoping that Andy Carroll would come back every transfer window. All them transfer windows that he was linked when he was maybe sort of not gone over the hill. He was at maybe the peak of his powers. He always hoped he would come back because he's black and white through and through. But it just hasn't worked out, and it's sad. It's a shame for me because I look at him and think he was fit. He was largely fit for much of the second season. Newcastle wasn't used. I think Steve Bruce could have used him more, but just didn't fit into the system. And I can't make an argument against that in some ways as well. It was more sentiment that I wanted to see him play. I don't think Andy Carroll was the answer to any questions that Newcastle United had, even when they were really struggling. If you brought him in, it was more just a case of the stuff we've got now isn't working, throw somebody else in. So yeah, he goes with my best wishes, and slightly sad that it didn't work. But I think ultimately, in football terms, it's an absolutely correct decision to get Andy Carroll out of the door, because he was neither use nor ornament. I said it on here before. There's no point in having him in your 25-man Premier League squad if you weren't going to use him. And Steve Bruce didn't use him at all last season.
No, for me, as I said on last night's show, I didn't expect anything else. Didn't expect him to be retained, and wish him all the best. Didn't work out for him though, as I expected. Mark Henderson said, "Evening lads, Liam, you've probably answered this before, but what happens to the 10,000 free tickets that were given out at St James's Park?"
What happens to them? I don't know. I don't know what. I think we're in a summer of unknowns with regards to season tickets, and I've had a few people come on Twitter and ask me about season tickets and where to go next and what I need to do, and I just have to keep sort of pushing people towards the box office and towards the club phone lines or etc. because I just don't know what's going to happen. And with regards to the tickets that they gave away, I don't see many more of those being sold. Do you, Steve? I think
No, I mean, it's
a huge black hole.
Strange situation at the moment, really, isn't it? Really strange. Because we don't really know what's going to happen yet. And although there's a lot of excitement and talk about essentially getting out of lockdown, there's still a bit of reticence, that we're going to get held back a little bit. And I keep thinking we're going to end up back in a bit of a spiral, but look, we'll wait and see. We can't make any predictions as to what's going to happen at all yet. People can't go to watch their bands at the Arena and the O2 Academy in Newcastle yet, or the City Hall, because those venues are shut. People can't go nightclubbing in Newcastle because the clubs are shut. So, the chances of us going to St James's Park as a 52,000 strong crowd are fairly limited at the moment, I would say. People are expecting to go back into the ground en masse. I think it'll get, held back. I genuinely can't see us all going back. But I could be wrong. We'll just have to wait and see. That's the answer to that question. Stu says, "Liam, do you think the Premier League will ask for another time extension on Friday? Apparently Bird and Bird are famous for delayed tactics and stalling. I really don't see how they can."
No, I don't think they can. They're going to have to answer by Friday, 5 p.m. on Friday. We could be sitting here now and they could have already answered. They could have already presented their arguments, their case, and answered the charges against them. That makes it sound a bit criminal, but no, they answer the issues that Newcastle United arose, case that Newcastle United put up against them, and I think they'll have to do that by 5 p.m. on Friday. Like I say, we could be sitting in a position now where they've already done it. What I would say, and I want to quickly mention this because I'm going to stop waffling because we're going to get through questions, but don't be expecting, like fans out there, if you're sitting waiting, refreshing, expecting answers on Friday because that's the deadline, just chill, because this is a legal process. And although that deadline's there, when 5 o'clock ticks over, there's not going to be a statement on the CAT website. Well, it's unlikely there'll be a statement on the CAT website at 1 minute past 5. This could be a case of going to legal teams, complex arguments put across, technicalities potentially, wanting things thrown out, arguing this, arguing that. It's going to have to go via CAT back to the club, and then there'll be a presentation. So, look, we could have something before Friday, we could have something on Friday. It could be next week, it could be beyond. But what I would do is just don't be sitting with a mindset and expectation that 5 o'clock Friday is your week and you're waiting for something to happen by that point, because ultimately I probably won't know. A lot of other journalists out there probably won't know. So yeah, I can see myself getting inundated with questions on Friday afternoon. So I'm just teeing it up to say I probably won't know what's going on, and nor will anybody, because it is, even though the CAT case is going to be played out in public, largely, some of it potentially streamed live. Newcastle United fans might be able to watch it with regard to the hearing that could take place in the next few weeks. But most of the arguments are behind closed doors, and we'll only find bits and bobs out.
Okay, good stuff. John from QTech says, was the deadline set at 5 p.m. Friday to fit in with the timing of the Fab 4 show? I wouldn't be surprised. Bede says, Liam, what do you make of the accounts, as our transfer budget seems miserly if true? The account shows us making a profit, and with the Premier League windfall, surely we've got a bigger budget. I mean, where did this £12 million figure come from, Liam?
It was reported in one of the national publications, I believe. I've been saying since January, anybody who regularly watches this show, I've been saying all the way through that it was going to be a reduced budget. But any club that reveals their budget in the transfer window, or even on the cusp of it, is mental. Why would you start telling everybody how much money you've got to spend on players, what your budget is, etc.? Newcastle will keep that very close to their chest. So whether it's 10 million, 8 million, 12 million, 25 million, we'll never know an exact amount, as was the case when I mentioned earlier. Everyone was talking about 20 million last summer, and it ended up being 35.
Okay, there we go. John Robson says, where are you going for your holidays, Liam? South Shields or Amble?
We're going to the Lake District, actually.
Oh,
The Lake District for a few nights. Yeah. So good fancy this year. I'm missing not going away. I think everybody will be sitting feeling the same as well. Would love to go, just get on a plane and just go off somewhere. But it's silliness. I always thought it was silliness booking this year because you just never know what was going to be around the corner. And as we're finding out now, that people are rushing back from Portugal, etc. And it's just a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Terry Armstrong says, do we know what kind of contract Graham Jones is on? He says, if England do well in the Euros, would he be favoured to walk into a management role? Do you know what contract he's on?
I don't know what contract he's on, but he's contracted to Newcastle United for next season, I'm led to believe. So I wouldn't be worried about that. If all of a sudden he gets offered a manager's job in the summer, I think it would have to be a good manager's job for Graham Jones to walk away, because he left a relatively cushy job at Bournemouth, and he probably would have got the Bournemouth manager's job after the departure of Jason Tindall. He would have got that. He would have walked in there. So you've got to think that he's moved everybody. He's moved his family back up here. He's just getting his feet under the table at Newcastle United, back on his home turf. I think he'd be here to stay. I wouldn't worry about that too much. And who's to judge how well he's doing? You know what I mean? Is he really doing that? How do we know that he's doing well as a number two? He's not even a number two. He's probably number 3 or 4 in that coaching setup with England. But look, I'm led to believe he's doing bits and bobs. He's doing a fair bit of stuff with the players. And like I said on here last week, he's somebody that I've spoken to people who've dealt with him at a grassroots level, going back years, and they talk about how he makes people feel 10 foot tall, whether you're an under 9 coming through, or whether you're an under 18 or whatever. He makes you feel 10 foot tall. Everybody feels like they've got the armband on walking into that pitch when he's been coaching you. And I just think that's the kind of infectious positive energy that Gareth Southgate, who did his coaching badges with him, would want around the England camp this summer, especially having such a young squad.
Doug Hall says, what do you think of the Griezmann signing Mbappe and winning 5 trophies with a tune on Football Manager 21? He says, we must be getting noticed with this takeover.
Yeah, I think he'll sign. I think he'll be the first signing through the door when everything gets agreed at the end of this month.
That's going to go on one of these Newcastle stupid things where you get a notification and it's going to be the headline. You do realise that. Liam Kennedy says we're going to sign Mbappe.
Honestly, I've never known my name mentioned so much as what I get on news now these days off this podcast. It's always Liam Kennedy gives update on such and such. I'm like, did I? I can't remember that.
Yeah, well, you're going to send the support into meltdown with that one, so we'll leave it there. Billy Miller says, Dwight Gale definitely signed a contract. It was reported a lot, but I never saw that it was officially announced. I mean, last I heard, it was still unannounced.
So, good question, Billy. My understanding of it is, I'm not 100% certain if pen has actually gone to paper. So has he signed a new deal? I'm not sure that he's actually done the deed. He's away at the moment on holiday, as many of the players are. And I imagine that's something that will get sorted out when he comes back. But he is a player that's verbally agreed to stay at Newcastle United. The manager worked hard to get him that contract, worked hard to convince him to say, yes, he would stay. He wanted the contract. He wants to stay. Obviously, of course, he wants to play games as well. But I think the way I look at it is, if Newcastle United are minded to get on the phone to Fulham, get on the phone to West Brom, teams like that who've got ambitions to get promoted. Of course, Fulham wanted to pay in the region of 15 million for him around 3 years ago, and it was a similar situation with West Brom, who will quoted 20 million. I would be getting on the phone to them this summer and saying, look, you can have a championship goal scorer ready to fire you back to the Premier League, ready-made, walk into your team. You can have him for 10 million quid, and there's a boost immediately to your bank. Bring Josh King in. That's the ideal sort of transfer moves I'll be making this summer.
Yep. Oh, love this. Look at this. Dun, 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 dun. He's got a mask on. Fantastic. Nearly 80 years of age and he's still looking the business. Actual publicity shot I found, Lee. I am listening to you, but I am rather obsessed with this whole fact that Harrison Ford is in the North East and now been to North Shields. I think it's fantastic.
Everybody watch out, because Steve Wraith's going to be camped at the Fish Quay tomorrow. He's going to be sitting there with a pair of dark glasses on waiting for Harrison Ford.
I'm going on an Indiana Jones hunt. That's what I'm going to go on tomorrow. But yeah, fantastic. It's just good to see, isn't it? It also gives you a good feeling of things almost getting back to normal. But it's no, look, it's just interesting, I think. So I make no apologies for pointing this out. Tom Lynch says the creators of Henry Morris proudly presents the £12 million NUFC transfer budget. I think that's pointing to the fact that it was our good friend Luke Edwards who made the papers, made the headline with that £12 million chat.
Look, Tom, as good as his sense of humour is, if it was Luke, and I don't know if it was Luke, then he's really well connected with Steve Bruce. So you know where he's probably got that from. Steve Bruce thinks he's got a £12 million budget this summer. Like I say, it would be a really silly thing for anybody to want to put out there to say, look, we're skint, we've got no money, or we've got X amount of money to spend on this. Because then when you go into any deal, people know what you've already got your cards on the table before you start talking. So yeah, I would always treat any predicted or estimated budgets with a big pinch of salt.
Yeah, me too. John from QTech says, I'm trying to find Harrison Ford tomorrow to give him a cult T-shirt. So, I think the old Mbappe thing's really starting to catch people's imagination as well. ADB says, Mbappe and Joe Linton, it's what dreams are made of. Which, I'm not sure whose dreams, of course. Tom Dixon says, Liam, are Newcastle looking at any championship players, like a striker? I mean, are we looking at that level?
I think it's always something that they are looking at. Is there anybody specific? We've seen Adam Armstrong mentioned a lot. I'm sceptical whether that's a deal that would be brokered by Newcastle United. If funds were unlimited, you're looking at the Championship and saying, is that players such as Ivan Toney can step back up? I don't think Newcastle United are going to be in that conversation even if they've got the money, simply because of the nature of him leaving, etc. But yeah, look, I don't know. I'm not privy to exacts on the transfer lists, but they'll be daft not to be looking at certain players to make the step up, because it can be a mixed bag. Some lads can come in and hit the ground running in the Premier League. Others can struggle. Newcastle United, they've got a couple of championship-ready players in their own squad. For example, Dwight Gale, who just doesn't cut it in the Premier League, to be honest, on a consistent enough basis. So yeah, it comes with its own pitfalls. And realistically, most of the time you get better value when you're looking elsewhere. If you look into the foreign markets, you do still get better value than what you get in the Championship, because it comes with a premium. Because it is a rich division as well. People need to remember that it is a rich division. There's a lot of clubs with, I don't know, struggling with COVID, etc. But a lot of clubs with a lot of money, who've got ambitions, who want to come up, and they don't sell their players on the cheap.
I mean, obviously, we'll keep getting linked with Ivan Toney and Adam Armstrong, but I find that highly unlikely that we'll sign either of them.
Look, I can't say for definite whether they will or won't, but I'd be surprised if I seen either of those in a black and white shirt.
Yeah, me too. Chris McCarthy, I've just sent you a message. NUFCmatters.com is where you can buy all the T-shirts. Lots of people going on about Harrison Ford now. Can Indiana find Hoffman, as he is illicit, he says. George Harrison on the Fab Four. It's Harrison Ford, not George Harrison. But I get what I see what you did there. Steve, make a tune out of Harrison Ford. Well, you never know. You might get a Newcastle shirt when he's here. Let's see if your Mbappe exclusive is in the Nationals. The cult has strange powers, says Jeff. Liam, my friends have been winding me up, saying we're going to get Charlie Wyke from Sunderland. I think you want to change your friends, Tom. Definitely not going to happen, that.
There's not much funny about that, is there, really? You need some new pals, like you say, Steve. No, I don't know where the hell that's coming from. I've heard Middlesbrough linked. I've heard a number of championship clubs have taken a look at him, but God, that's a big jump for a player of that ability.
Yeah, John says, does Liam have the exclusive that Harrison is buying the tune?
I don't know. God, we need somebody to buy it, and ideally we need it to be the PIF, one of the biggest sovereign wealth funds in the world. That's what we're all sitting here waiting for. It's a lot of people tune into their show for, and let's just see how it plays out. I've got to say, like, it could be a really interesting 8-10 weeks, I think, in Newcastle United. It could also flip a coin. It could also be more delays and more not knowing. But that's the nature of the beast. It is what it is, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, ADB's come up with the title of the film, which has been obviously shrouded in secrecy. It's Indiana Jones and the Takeover of Doom. Nicholas from the Felon says, Indiana Jones and the Temple on the Hill. paid by a wealthy Middle East company to secure the takeover. So that certainly captured people's imagination. Terry Armstrong says, North Shields, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Meth, he says.
Oh,
And
Terry,
Mark Bayer says, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Toon. He says, that has a good ring to it. And if Harrison Ford buys NUFC, surely we'd be known as War Stars. I think it's fantastic. The chat's it's always great when we end up with one of this. Craig Elrington says, Steve, with you promoting boxing and some of the fights that have happened recently, you should promote Mike Ashley versus Richard Masters, and the winner gets the decision on the takeover. I think Richard Masters would run around the ring and tire Mike Ashley out. I think that would be. I think that might be a bad idea. If I'm perfectly honest, I think he would. I think he might end up. He might end up pulling a flanker. Rafa Benitez as God says, do you think there's any chance of an out of court settlement, Liam? The Premier League must be tempted to just pass it instead of going through court cases.
Yes, I do think there's a possibility, but do I know whether it's a distinct possibility, a faint one? No, I've got no idea. Without being party to all of the conversations, it's impossible for anybody to guess that. There could be an out-of-court settlement. I think that's been the hope all the way through, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I say, the next play is with the Premier League. We'll have to see what their next move is, and the club will react and act accordingly beyond that.
Yeah, good shout. If Harrison scores were on the pitch, says Graham Coleman. I just want to ask you about this one. I asked Holly about this last night. Gibbo in the Chronicle, just giving a rather frank assessment about John Joe Shelvey. As for Shelvey, I'm afraid he's a football dinosaur. Yesterday's man shuffles around the pitch rather than sprints, relies heavily on Hollywood passes, which on the low of averages often fail to come off. Interesting. Would you say that's a fair assessment from Gibbo?
Look, I think it is a fair assessment. An absolute legend of the Northeast journalistic scene, Gibbo. What I would disagree slightly on, I think over the last 12 months in particular, I think John Joe Shelvey has curbed the Hollywood ball. I don't think he plays it as much as he used to. I think he does pass it a bit better. But look, I've been on the record in this show saying on numerous occasions this season, he's the best passer of the ball I've ever seen in my life. And he was terrible for much of the season. And then he goes and has the last two games like he did, where he was really influential, wore the armband of pride, ran his socks off, did his defensive work, played good, positive forward passes, did the simple game well. And you soften to him again, you're like, oh, actually, he was all right there. But looking, like I said medium term, really short term, if I can replace him with a Hamza Chowdhury this summer, then I will do that. Because that's the position that he'll probably play. And John Joe Shelvey is limited in terms of you look at the club. If he'd shown the ability that he does in flashes at Newcastle United, he wouldn't be at Newcastle United. But he doesn't. He does it maybe 10 games in a 40-game season. That's where you'll see John Joe Shelvey do okay, and that's just not good enough at Premier League level.
No, these comments are still coming in. Michael Gilchrist says Indiana Jones and the Lost Stotty. What else? Matty Kelly says Harrison Ford in the search for the missing money. They're never ending. Trulls changes it. Tax says I don't think so. Tom Lynch. Remember, Masters is part of the Dark Forces. Just in reference to what Tom was saying before. Billy Tracer. Shelvey thinks he's Glenn Hoddle. Unfortunately, he's more like Glenn Miller, i.e., missing. It's a bit harsh, really. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Very poor taste. Lots of these coming in anyway. There's some absolute belters. Thanks to everybody in the chat for putting them in. And I think just lots of people. Some Indiana Jones and the Temple of Cults, not a typo. That's very good. I see exactly what you did there. Somebody said to check me inbox on. Right, okay. I'll get this out as well. So I presume this guy was the villain. See, I've started something now with this film stuff. Now let's see whether I can get this photo up. This guy, I'm sure he was the villain in James Bond, but he's actually in the. You never
know which way this is going to go, do it, Steve? It has its own life and goes down different avenues.
There we go. That's the photo that I've just been sent on Twitter by Mark, and he says this guy Mads Mikkelsen is also in the northeast. So he is clearly playing the villain in Indiana Jones. So there we go. We're getting it all tonight. Indiana Jones, Gans doing the netty, says Stu. And trolls, Indiana Jones and the skull of Bruce.
Doesn't bring up great imagery, does it? It's all right though.
John Joe did enough in the last few games to be given a chance at next season. He's not capable of doing it long term. Gary says, Liam and Steve, will you both think that there will be loads of people and some teams that are afraid of Newcastle when they know we will be one of the toughest teams in the future of up and downs? I think what he's saying is, if the takeover goes through, do you think that people see us as a threat and that's why they've done their best to stop it?
It's a really difficult one, actually. I was on the phone today talking to our friend Steve Hasty, and we're playing through all of these different scenarios and the conspiracies and the plain facts and how it all plays out. And look, it's an interesting one, and I think there is a case to be made. Amanda Staveley said it herself that Liverpool and Tottenham and others were fearful and didn't want Newcastle United to be a part of the top six party. So yeah, believe what you want to believe out there, but look, there's been something going on, and it's just nice to know that, fingers crossed, in the next few months we'll start to find out little bits and bobs as to what exactly was going on, if everything progresses as the people who are in the know suggest it will.
Thanks to the NUFC Mags on Twitter for doing one of those reface app things with me as Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford in Star Wars, etc. He's copied you in, Liam, so you'll get a laugh at that. Big shout out to David Crone as well. Sorry, mate, I forgot to mention this earlier. He beeped at us when I was out on my walk today. So, I didn't know who it was. I waved. That's basically what you do. Thomas Wilson, evening, mate. He says, all right, Steve, all right, Liam. Would you watch SOS Who Dares Win? Would you watch? Would you? I don't know. Would you go in it, Liam? It's not for me. Like I did the Territorial Army when I was 21, right. And that was bad enough for me. Like I certainly couldn't do what they do in the SAS. I couldn't have done it when I was fit. Never mind now.
Yeah, no, it's quite incredible that the length they put themselves, not just physically but mentally, the length they put them through. It's quite an incredible program. I love it. I think he's controversial on Twitter, etc. But I think Ant Middleton is somebody that. He's a fantastic. Anybody's read any of his books, I'm a big fan of his message and his positivity in the way that he lives his life and things like that after having troubles. So yeah, I love that program. Would I watch a Premier League special? Get in the comments. Let's have some suggestions as to who you'd like to see put through by the lads, and it'll be interesting to see what people come back with.
Dave Harrison's got to go to archery. Take care, mate. Tom Lynch says, Indiana Jones in the Stadium of Doom. Indy visits the Village of the Damned as they fail yet again in their quest to leave the third division. Quite like that one as well. Brilliant. Honestly, some absolute belters coming through. Liam, time's beating us again. Just please give us a bit of a plug as to where people can find your work as usual, mate.
Just check along the bottom here. It's my Twitter account is @LiamJKennedy23. You'll see a lot of my work on there. You'll see what I do, and anybody who watches this show regularly knows that we work on a subscription system. So any help you can get, and if you like what we do, then just subscribe. It's quite cheap, to be honest. The way the industry's going these days, you're going to have to start paying for your content. That's just the way that it is. You're not going to get it for free for much longer. And we're just part of that. That if you like the content, you like the stuff that we do, especially on here, then you have to pay for it, unfortunately. And any help would be much appreciated.
Billy says, Gibbo said the Tomb would probably be the richest club in the world should the takeover go through. Do you lads think the fans could handle it? Good last question. Yeah, I do.
Fans could handle it? Yeah, of course they would. Absolutely flying in 2-footed, every single one of them. Would love that. I can't see anybody who would be critical, apart from the negative voices that make themselves known from time to time on social media.
Yeah, Captain Clifford says Indiana Jones fighting his way up Shields Road. Is that now? Is that live? I wouldn't be surprised. Raiders of St James's Park when the taxman showed up, says Jody Chetty. Another good one. Plenty of them. Some absolute classics. It's always good to have a bit of a laugh on these shows as well. So thanks to everybody in the chat for doing it. Tom asking if I can get Steve Harper on. Impossible, mate, at the moment. He works for the club. And the club wouldn't come on something like this, so it's not even worth asking. But listen, if Steve ever happens to step away from Newcastle United, it's certainly a question I can ask. I'm good pals with Steve and got a lot of time for him.
Yeah, he's with the club at the moment, isn't he? Doing a lot of academy work. So yeah, it's one of those.
Impossible at the moment, but yeah, not something we'd ever write off in the future. But yeah, we've got a few ex-players lined up though throughout the summer. Plenty more content coming up, and I'm back with the retro show tomorrow night. Liam will be back next Tuesday. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for joining in the chat. And Liam, thank you, mate. See you next week.
Cheers.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling